Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Smart Trucking Live. Glad you could join us. See all the regulars here. Kelly Patterson's here. Kelly Patterson's mom is here. Welcome, Mrs. Patterson. Happy you could join us. Who else have we got? Hamish K, the famous Hamish K. Snake Man. Oh, Bradley Weber. Shannon's here. I know I saw Shannon's name. Robert Daniel, Grilled Mortal. Glad you guys could all join us. How's it going today? I'll tell you in a few minutes. I'll let a few more people join us, but I'll have to tell you the story about what kicked off today's topic and what set me off and what got me going. So I'll be interested to share that with you. I want your thoughts on some of the stuff we'll be talking about today. I have kind of I don't know, kind of a rigid opinion on stuff like this, but I want your take too. So please send me some comments when we get rolling here and let me know what you think anyway. Somebody was in Tennessee and it was 80 degrees. I remember reading that. There he is, Robert Daniel. Man, that's kind of warm for Tennessee this time of year, isn't it? But well, good place to be. Good place to be. What else scared me here? Was it Grilled Mortal said he knows Henry's there. That's I'm not a sledder, so I'd never even dream of attempting to go to Henry's in the wintertime. I imagine you could probably do it if it got cold enough on the ice, but it wouldn't be me. What else do we know here? I saw, was it Snake Man is working for YRC now? That's got to be a good job. I don't know if those guys are still unionized or not, but they generally were a good outfit to work for, and they paid really well. So, good job there, Snake Man. Good grab, good catch. Okay, let's kick it off here. Now, I'm sure that most of you guys, if not all of you guys, have seen at some point Ice Road Truckers on television, and I watched the first episode and thought, well, that's really stupid, and I haven't really watched much since. But one of the newer guys that came along years after, because the series kept going, his name was Arthur Burke, and I don't know if any of you guys watched that, but he's kind of a high-wound Eastern Canadian with an accent and the whole 9 yards. Well, it turns out that he kind of lit his apartment on fire here a couple of months ago, cooking up some sort of a drug concoction. So it was marijuana. Marijuana is legal in Canada, but they charged him with the fire, with starting the fire. But because marijuana is legal, they didn't charge him with the drugs. However, the problem is that he's a commercial driver. He's a commercial truck driver, and in Canada, they have a zero tolerance policy on drugs. So this guy, this Art Burke, and he seems like a likable fella too. He's kind of funny to watch. I'm sure he's good to have a couple of drinks with, but everybody now knows that he's into marijuana. So, including the people that monitor his truck license, whatever province he's got it from, they should be yanking his ticket. But they said in the article that I read, which was on the internet here, one of the truck news internet shows, that he got fined for the fire, but he'll still be back this winter with Ice Road Trucking. And I'm thinking, well, he shouldn't be able to do that because he shouldn't have a job, because the insurance company that insures whoever the guy drives for should be going, hey, no ticky, no laundry, and that's the end of that. But this is Canada, and we have a double standard for all sorts of things up here. So it'll be curious to see if this guy manages to keep his 6-digit a year TV show trucking job. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I'd be curious to know what you guys think of this situation. Should this guy be allowed to continue? And he's on the ice roads, and that's a dangerous place to be. So should this guy be allowed to continue to drive commercially when everybody and his dog knows now that he's a dope smoker? Hard to say. And politics in Canada, will they even be able to connect the dots? Will the right party go, hey, wait a minute? And up here in the government, probably not. So it'll be curious to see. But this drug business, this whole thing is becoming quite the situation in Canada and the States. Now, in Canada, they don't drug test drivers. God knows why, but they don't. But in the States, they certainly do. I remember having to get drug tested as a Canadian just so I could cross the border to go stateside. I had no problem with that. But now that marijuana is becoming legalized, not only in Canada, but in a number of the U.S. states, and you know that people are using it, it'll be interesting to watch the ongoing impact of this because as far as I know, the United States also still has a zero policy on drugs. Yet, all of a sudden, zero tolerance. What did I say?
Zero policy.
Yeah, zero tolerance policy on drugs. So as far as I know, they should still be shutting drivers down for this. But, you know, it's a tough battle. I'm sure. I read something the other day that said in the last, when they formed like a drug clearinghouse last year. You guys remember that? And they said in the first 8 months that the clearinghouse had been established, they kicked out 35,000 drivers for, they had to go dry out. So if the driver shortage, and at that time the driver shortage was 60,000 drivers, that's more than half of the drivers that they tossed for testing positive for drugs. Most of them tested positive for marijuana. It was over half of them. But you think, holy smokes, here they are in a driver shortage. And now they're bringing in this drug clearinghouse, which I think is a good thing. I'm all for it, don't get me wrong. But they're going to lose just a canoe full of drivers over this deal. So it'll be interesting to me now to see if the trucking companies are realizing that a guy with a truck license, a CDL, and a clean drug abstract, his stock just went up, in my opinion. They've got to pay more because there are fewer guys like that around. So the license becomes worth more. They've got to pay more because it's getting harder to find guys that'll test negative for these drug tests. And the U.S. is serious about it. They're trying to implement hair follicle testing now, which is, I forget the percentage. It's 30 or 50% more effective, at least, than the way they do it now. So,
I'm going to interrupt here. A couple chat donations. Sorry, chat. I had to wait a hot 5 minutes there for him to stop talking for a minute there. Adam Panage, thank you very much for the $10, my friend. He says, hello there. Long-time fan. Finally able to catch you live. You were the reason that I'm still here driving. Keep on keeping on. Thank you very much, Adam. Hamish K with the £2 coming in. I'm from a farm, so I'd be a good trucker. Thank you very much, Hamish. Good to see you in the chat this afternoon. And Mark Vaz, thank you very much for the $10 donation. Appreciate you guys very much and everything you do. Hope to come meet you someday in, sorry, I have the location cut off here. Let me read what location that is. Minnesota. Hope you come visit in Minnesota. Again, thank you to Mark Vaz, Hamish, and Adam.
Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate it. The donations help us modernize our old equipment here, so thank you very much. Anyhow, hair follicle testing. It's going to become a thing, I think, so I'm sure. So it'll be interesting to see now if our wages go up because it becomes harder to find guys that test negative for drugs.
Go through the point. It's your own business what you do.
Yes.
Adam, by the way, if I can just throw in a note, you had a question if you could ask something off topic to today's stream. Of course you can, my friend. So throw that question in chat.
Now, I'd like to say that whatever you do, and I have nothing against people, any people. So it's whatever you do in your own time is your own business. I have no problem with any of that. But if you're going to hold a commercial license, you just can't be a drug user. It's as simple as that. And drugs are mind altering, even a little bit. So why you just can't be in a great big heavy commercial vehicle surrounded by cars and have your mind altered just one little bit. You can do what you want in your own time, but you can't bring it to the road. You can't bring it to the highway. It's as simple as that. So that's that. I just wanted to qualify that. So where was I there now? So this drug clearinghouse, I don't know if you remember or not, the one that established down in the States, it crashed last year because they got so many people trying to get into the thing all at the same time. It's around Christmas time, I think, or a little after, January 1st, and the system got overloaded. So many carriers, because they're making this law that the carriers have to check everybody. So they're making this law that everybody's got to get on board with this. And they had so many submissions, it crashed last year. The same clearinghouse is predicting now that they're going to have a large influx again this year come Christmas time or a little afterwards. And they're hoping that the system doesn't crash again, but they get a huge number of people and carriers applying for it. So if you're I don't know how to say this. If you need to have drug testing done, you might want to have your carrier submit that now to avoid the Christmas rush, for lack of a better way to say it. But it's going to become a mandatory thing in trucking. I think it's a good thing, but it's going to affect an awful lot of drivers. Like I said before, 35,000 drivers last year in the first 8 months were disqualified from driving, and I'm not sure how it works after that. They have to go off the road anyway, and I don't know how long they've got to sit and dry out, and whether they could get rehired or how the system works. It doesn't really matter, because carriers don't want guys that are off drying out for a while. They need guys all the time. They need full-time drivers. So anything like that jeopardizes a guy's career that's got a CDL. You might as well, sooner or later they're going to catch up with you. You might as well kiss that career goodbye. And it's a good career. So, is it really worth it for a wild Saturday night? So anyway, that's my take on that. But I was annoyed that this Art Burke from Ice Road Trucking may get to be on the show here in Canada again, because it sets an example for truck drivers, I think. Here's a guy that everybody knows he's cooking up some sort of God knows what so he can inhale it or breathe it or drink it, or I don't know what he does with it. And then he's going to be on the road. And everybody up here thinks that's okay. And they shouldn't think that's okay. So I don't think Ice Road Truckers should give him his job back, basically. But
Michelle says lawyers say the commercial trucking industry will never allow recreational marijuana. Accident claims and lawsuits are that reason.
That's right.
And I agree completely with that.
They don't mix.
But it's going to be a difficult thing to stop, to prevent. And this clearinghouse is a big step towards that. But yeah, it's just not the right thing to do if you drive a truck. And that's just the way it is.
Ask them how they feel about the clearing.
So I want to know, like I said earlier, I've got a fairly black and white opinion on this stuff, but I'd like to know if you agree or disagree. I'm curious, and maybe I'm seeing it with blinders on, but that is the way I see it. So give me your input. I want to know. Hamish K, never buy a Volvo. You are in my good books, Hamish. Appreciate that. One of these days I'm going to get slapped for picking on Volvos, but it won't be today. So thank you, Hamish. Anyway, I go off on a tangent there. I went to Swift Academy. They did hair follicle and urine tests, and there were over 20 people who applied. 9 decided not to go through the program. One failed. Only 9 out of the original 20 passed. That's from Snake Man. Yeah, and I'm sure that's a fairly typical statistic everywhere lately. So all sorts of guys think they can slide in or fool the system. And this hair follicle system, I don't think there's any fooling that system from the sounds of it.
Nick's got a comment for you.
Jeff Thomas says, if I can drink at night, I should be able to smoke as well.
Well, fair enough, but they know now that alcohol passes through your system and it's out in 24 hours. They also know now that most drugs stay in your system for at least 30 days, perhaps longer. So be aware of that. Like if you want to smoke or whatever on the weekend when you're off duty, go right ahead. That's your call. But be aware, come Monday morning, that stuff isn't out of your system, and you may get yanked. You may lose your job over the deal. Yep, it intrudes on people's recreational activity. But trucking is a serious business.
Because they've chosen trucking as a profession. They have not.
Yes, as Kathy points out, you've got to choose one or the other.
Yeah.
You can choose trucking as a profession, or you can choose recreational drugs.
The door doesn't
It's
swing both ways.
yeah, it's black and white. That's why I see it that way. I guess it's you've got to choose one or the other. So, yep, kind of a tough deal, but that's just the way it is.
Have you talked about how long it stays in the system for?
I did, yes. Most drugs they believe now stay in the system at least 30 days. That's a minimum.
That's not correct. Each one has their own lifespan.
Yes, each one has their own lifespan. But marijuana, which is
30 days, actually.
yes, 30 days, and some of them are longer depending on the drug. But yeah, it's serious business, and they're cracking down on it.
So when you say it stays in their system, what do you mean by that?
You can have a drug test, and fail the test.
Well, yes, of course, but do you believe it has any physical effects on that?
Not the point. It's against the law.
It doesn't matter whether I believe it has any effects. It's what the law believes, and the law believes that it does. So yeah, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but you're answering to the law, and they have a zero tolerance on the thing. So you can argue it all day long, you can take it to court, but you're not going to win, because that's how they feel about the deal. And until the science changes, that's just the way it's going to be. So
Keep going. Don't
yeah, no, now Snake Man here, this is a wee bit off topic, but he says that a lot of the training schools switch to automatic trucks, which can get drivers through faster, so the training time is reduced. And I never thought of that. I never thought of that being a factor with automatic transmissions. Of course he's right. And of course there's always a big rush to suck them in and pump them out. So
AJ Waters says, how do you get a drug test if you're an owner-operator / independent driver and don't work for a company?
You've got to join a drug program, depending on where you are. In Canada, if you want to run the states, you find one of these drug programs and you join it, and you've got to submit to testing every once in a while. That's just part of the deal, and the U.S. tracks this stuff even for Canadian guys, and have been for a long time. Years ago, when I was running my own authority, we got a call from a guy in New York State, Upper New York State, wanting to know why I wasn't on a drug program, because it had been made mandatory down there. And I thought, never thought about it. I didn't have an issue that way. I thought, well, if they test me, I'll be okay. But he gave us a set number of days to get enrolled in a drug program, or he was pulling my operating authority for the states. I couldn't afford that, so I joined the drug program. They're pretty militant about it, pretty strict. But that's all right. I have no problem with that.
Chris wanted to clarify that cannabis stays in your system for up to 60 days. And Craig Beats, you would be right, that was a Mac in the background. Bruce Watson says, drugs are for losers. Ooh.
Ooh. See, yep. So where was I?
Get their opinions on stuff.
Yeah, so I'd like to know. I'd like to know what your take on all of this is anyway. I know it's kind of a harsh line, but I think it's a necessary line. It's It's all got to do with safety, and it's not just your safety. It's the safety of everybody in all the cars around you. So, you've got to think of the big picture here. You've got to think
Here's
about
a great comment.
everybody.
Daniel, this is a great comment.
So I'm checking to see what you guys think of that.
Daniel Meredith Jr. says, I don't want to be around an 18-wheeler or a 4-wheeler who does drugs or alcohol if I'm in a semi or a 4-wheeler because I would like to come home to my wife. Completely understandable.
Yeah. No. There's.
Makes sense.
Yeah. There's something else, and he brought up the subject too. He's exactly right. Is it fair that you can drive your 4-wheeler stoned out of your mind? Is that why don't they clamp down on that? They should be clamping down on that, but they won't ever because it's just probably too hard to patrol. But they should. They certainly should.
We have a DOT FMCSA compliance specialist.
Sam F., thank you very much for the $2 donation, my friend. He wants to know, have you ever smoked weed yourself, Dave?
No. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. No.
And neither have I.
No, Kathy never has. No. And I know what the argument's going to be. It's going to be, well, if you don't knock it, if you haven't tried it. If you're lacking, if you're lacking nothing, why would you have to try it? So
But it doesn't matter. Everybody has their own.
Everybody has their
They're
own
entitled to choice, but they
choice.
also need to face the consequences if there are any.
Yeah, that's right.
Bradley makes a really good point. He wants to know if we can drug test some dispatchers as well.
Right on.
They should be able to drug test dispatchers. Some of those guys are as high as loons. I'll get some letters about that or some comments, but yeah, they should. I've had a couple dispatchers in my time that were just gone, just gone. I had one of my best friends. They say I'm going to go off on a tangent here. I had one of my best friends, and they say that marijuana isn't addictive. I'm here to tell you that it is because it happened to one of my very best friends, and I'd known him since I was a kid, and he was heavily addicted. He smoked it all the time, every day, and it was sad over the years to watch his mind literally turn to mush, and he did it right before our eyes, and it was gut-wrenching. It was really sad, and I never quite forgot that or got over it.
Aaron Layman says, apparently Swift hair tests along with urine because they busted so many guys using fake PP. Unsurprising.
Yeah, there's
It's always been a huge deal.
Apparently hair follicle testing is much more difficult to cheat at, basically. But you got to do it. You got to do it because you got to get these guys off the road. You want to make the road as safe as possible, absolutely as safe as possible. So if you're going to be a truck driver, if that's your career, you've got to get away from the other stuff. It's just, you got to do it.
Taylor
Simple.
says drug test brokers as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You got to lie test the brokers, but they don't have the technology for that.
Somebody has asked, will a company hire after a failed DOT?
You know what? I don't know how that works now, and I imagine that varies depending on the company. But I don't know. The idea of this clearinghouse is that all the carriers now can check your history and then make that call as to whether or not they're going to pick you up or not. But that's the idea of this clearinghouse.
There's a dumb comment.
Tim
Yeah.
Capadonna says, I don't think anyone is advocating to smoke weed while driving. It's more of a recreational at-home use.
Yes, but it's...
Which is the point. I think the point of today's discussion, really is whether or not, if you can properly balance the two, having one in your recreational life and being able to be a professional truck driver, Now, Dave, I think what you've stated thus far, your clear opinion is no, the two don't mix, even if it is recreational. Would I be right in saying
Yeah,
that?
yeah, the two don't mix. If you're going to take 6 months off and go to Cabo, smoke your brains out.
Somebody mentioned that actually. They said if they made enough money, they could take 2 months off,
Yeah,
do their thing,
clean out. Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
smoke,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
that's their own business.
That's entirely their decision. But if you're going to get in the truck, this is the deal.
And somebody said, is alcohol fine? No.
No, alcohol's not fine either. It's we know a whole lot more about alcohol. We know it's in your system 24 hours. My friend Richard knew an old fella. He went to his 50th wedding anniversary. They had a party. He had a couple of glasses of wine at dinner because it was their anniversary, and got pulled over the next morning and lost his license. And it's such an innocent thing, but you've got to be careful. You've got to be careful. It's such an innocent thing, but rules are rules. They make the rules. My trainer got fired for failing a drug test. Pasha Sar. Yeah, that'd look good on a training school.
No, it wouldn't.
I'm being sarcastic.
Well, maybe they're not getting it.
A lot of people are saying that drinking is worse than smoking. I don't know if you already addressed this directly already, but
Well, I guess it depends on the volume. If you end up as an alcoholic, certainly that's not good. And alcohol has ruined people's lives. Alcohol.
I think the point that some people in the chat are making, that it seems kind of hypocritical to say that weed is okay, but alcohol isn't. Now, I know you touched a little bit upon one stays in your system for a much shorter period of time than the other, but is there any other reason you would say that alcohol isn't as damaging to a professional driver as weed?
Let me understand your question.
Do you think alcohol is less damaging to a professional driver
Oh,
than
it's
marijuana?
it's every bit as damaging. It's
So
just
then why is alcohol allowed then, is my question.
it's not. It just comes out of your system sooner.
Yes,
We-
but no, your point is that you can't mix recreational marijuana and be a professional driver, but you can mix
No, that's not
recreational
my
drinking.
point at all.
He doesn't write the
Then you
laws.
should clarify that, because a lot of people in the chat are a little bit misconstrued by your point here.
My point is that you're responsible for your license. Your license requires that you have a negative drug test. What you do in your recreational time is your business. You can do whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Just remember that what the law requires is it's got to be at least 24 hours before you can get back in a truck after having a few drinks. And we've heard 30 days, we've heard 60 days, depending on what drug we're talking about. Before you get back into a truck, you've got to have that time off too. What you do in your own personal time, completely your own business. But the law is not going to let you mix the two. It's as simple as that.
And some people are chatting here, but weed doesn't ruin your liver. We're not talking about the long-term effects here. We're not doctors talking
No.
about the long-term
Yeah,
effects. We're talking about how it affects your driving.
That's right. This is only to do with your commercial license,
And that you comply with the law.
and that you comply with the law. How the law views your position as a commercial driver, as a professional driver, and the ramifications of that should you not obey. It's the truck drivers don't get to make the rules.
That's right.
The law makes the rules. The truck drivers have to follow them if they want to stay in good stand with the law. Thanks for the clarification, Dan Higgins. No problem. I guess I was going on, and I do that. But yeah, that's the deal. I've got nothing personal against any of it. You can do whatever you like, but if you're going to drive a truck, the law says this is the deal, and you got to stick to it. And if you don't, sooner or later they're going to stop you from driving a truck.
Nick read that one. Nick's gonna read one.
Okay. Ponzi Zombie says the rich folk make the laws. Yeah, that's kind of true. But sometimes the rich folks are some of the worst offenders, but they're not driving trucks.
Yezer Azim says, I agree with all of what you're saying thus far. I just want to add that aggressive driving is, I think he means to say, just is equally as dangerous as drinking and smoking while driving, and he's not doing any of them.
Yes, and they crack down on that too.
Yes, and that's a good point. Aggressive driving is every bit as dangerous.
The downside is that they can't test to see if you're an aggressive driver.
That's right. They can't.
So.
All they can do is watch to see if you're driving aggressively. But yeah, those people are absolutely dangerous. But yeah, it's not as big a focus, I guess. I don't know how else to say that, but the law seems to concentrate less on that. But in my opinion, they should concentrate more on it. A lot of guys, the defunding of the police, I think that's insane. But one of the things I think they should do is hire more highway patrol officers. Think about how many times you get cut off in the course of a day by a four-wheeler or someone driving aggressively like that. If there were more cops they'd catch, more of these guys, we'd all be safer. I'm all for, more cops. So,
Dan Higgins believes we need to have more accurate drug tests to allow drivers to have the choice between being a professional driver and recreational use of marijuana and alcohol. Until then, he chooses his CDLA.
Exactly.
Which I believe that's just the perfect middle ground there.
Exactly. You've got to make the choice. Got to choose.
Yeah, because it's the law.
Yeah.
See, people are saying, well, they're not high a week later, but it's in their bloodstream. But it's the law.
Yeah, everyone knows it's the law. It's about whether or not the law is right. Well, until they change the law, you got to go with what they're going with. So, that's the deal. The law, they may find that the science changes down the road here in a few years, but right now you got to go with what they're saying. That's just the deal. Michael Mueller, I studied all week. I studied all my rest except I studied for all the rest except my drug test. He didn't study for his drug test. Michael, I think that's safe. Just skip that part. Glad to see you here, Michael. I hadn't caught you. You'd grabbed us here, but glad you're here.
Akis with the $5 donation. Thank you very much. Hope you're enjoying the stream thus far. If I have very short hair or a bald head altogether, this is a really good question for you, Dave, because you'll be able to relate to this.
Man.
Can't see under the hat chat, but it's not there. How can I pass a drug test that requires a hair sample? So do you trim your beard at that point, Dave? Your armpit hair, perhaps? the carpet.
That's perhaps? A good question, to which I hesitate to answer.
It should be an impulse reaction. There should be no hesitation to that question. Go with
your head isn't the only place there's hair on your body. There's arms.
No, we don't do drug tests.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm sure they'll find hair somewhere on you, or make you not hire you until you can grow enough that they can test it. One of the two.
Jonathan Mestral with the $100 donation. I had to read that like 3 times just to make sure I wasn't reading that incorrectly. Jonathan, you're in our stream all the time. We appreciate you being in our streams regularly and always commenting and donating. Thank you so much for the generosity rather. You got me flustered here now. I can barely read the chat. I agree that no driver should be under the influence while on the job. But how can a driver be hammered on the road but can't smoke in their home time? If pot is legal where you live, you should be able to smoke at home. There should be better testing. And yes, ultimately, the end of your statement there, I think, answers your own question almost, where if there was better testing, it would just... It would allow for more recreational use so that those who do use responsibly could mix professional driving and recreational use. But unfortunately, just with poor testing right now, you just can't, because it lasts in your blood system too long, and you ping and you fail on the drug test because it lasts too long in your system because of poor tests.
And don't you wonder for a minute, by the way, that they're not trying to develop better drug testing. There's guys working on that all the time. And Michael Mueller, I knew what you meant. I saw that, but yeah, I knew what you were saying.
Dan Higgins, thank you very much for the $10. And if you have a question, feel free to throw it in there. We'll get that answered.
Jamie Strawn says truck drivers being over 200 pounds overweight is more dangerous than someone that smoked weed last week. They have, they're kind of back and forth on that, because again, the science isn't confirmed on that. First they had these big sleep apnea programs a couple of years ago, and there was some truth to that, but now the science has backed away from that. The point is you want to be safe all the time.
And other people too.
And other people
It's not all about
around
you.
the truck need to be safe as well. So whatever you can do to hold that standard of safety is what you need to do to be a professional driver. It takes more. You have a higher standard as a professional driver, and you've got to maintain that.
Daniel Meredith Jr. says, I was at gunpoint by another truck driver in New Mexico who was drinking liquor. Had to get the DOT involved, and he was arrested. This is why he had to stop OTR with Swift.
Wow.
And the pay sucked.
Wow. Yeah, there's some scary stuff that goes on out there, and half the time it turns out that the guy is high. These guys are high, or they're robbing for drug money or something like that. It contributes to the crime rate. But yeah, there's rest areas that aren't safe to stop in. There's truck stops that aren't safe to stop in, and so much of that crime is related to drugs. So, you've got to bear that in mind too. Some truck stops now are no longer safe. I never had any problem in West Memphis, for instance, but
I think it's an important thing to say from the DOT FMCSA.
DOT FM CSA compliance specialist says that Class A CDL means that you operate a 18-wheeler and a 4-wheeler regardless, indifferently, as a professional driver. You should be able to operate both as a professional driver.
Regardless of whether or not you be behind 18 or 4.
that's exactly right. Exactly right. You're just a better driver. Act like one. Sounds like a
Higher
teacher.
level.
Yeah, a higher standard. And hopefully they'll get to figure that out and jack our pay up some. They certainly need to. But if the driver shortage is 60,000 drivers now, then they pull half these guys off the road because they test positive. Boy, think of the spot that Swift Knight and Werner and all those guys are going to be in. They'll be begging you to come to work, and there's nothing wrong with that. Wow.
The most dangerous thing on the road is the 4-wheeler's lack of
Container
knowledge.
Guru says the most dangerous thing on the road is the 4-wheeler's lack of knowledge of tractor trailers.
That certainly is one of the most dangerous things, and I agree with that. Container Guru, I meant to comment there. I saw you're loading for Florida. Good man. Luckier than me. But you're right. That I go on and on about driver training. If it was up to me, they don't let me make the laws, but I'd yank every one of those guys in for retesting every year, all those car drivers, because they're the ones that scare the heck out of me. But I guess that's just too much to ask. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, Ponzi Zombie's been to West Memphis and had his radio on, obviously. But yeah, there are truck stops that just not safe anymore. And that's not right. You should be able to park anywhere you want at night and not worry about crazies in the parking lot. But it hasn't been the way it's been the last while. What's the highest class license, Ranesh? It's called a CDL. It's for tractor trailers in the States, and up here in Canada, it's called a Class 1 or an AZ license. But yeah, it just allows you to run tractor trailers.
Good point.
Oh, Container Guru lives just outside of Jacksonville. So you're on your way home. That's all right.
Jonathan, thank you once again for another $5. Just to clarify, he does follow the law. That was just his opinion.
No. And there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely. We understood that, Jonathan. No problem there. But yeah, the law is the law. Not a whole lot of wiggle room. So we'll see now if they enforce the law on this Art Burke of Ice Road Truckers. That'll be interesting to see.
Tim Capadonna says, Tesla says we'll all be out of a job in 18 months anyways.
See, there's a guy that's on drugs right there. Tesla's got so many problems I wouldn't know where to start. But anyway, Tim, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it at all. Nobody's worried here. It's hard to tell when they send comments like this whether they're joking or whether they're serious, because there's no intonation in the voice in the comments, so it's hard to tell. But I would assume that that's a joke. Michael Mueller, you must have got here a little late. Art Burke is that ice road trucker. He burned down his apartment trying to cook up some drug concoction. So he's in Canada, so he didn't get convicted of drugs because this is Canada, but he got convicted of arson by burning down his apartment by accident. But he's still going to be allowed on ice road truckers when the ice forms here this winter. They're still going to let him keep his license and let him drive a truck, even though they know that he's a stoner and that there's a zero tolerance on drug use for commercial drivers. But he's a movie star, so maybe the rules aren't going to apply to him. I'll be mad if that's the case, so I'll be following that. But that's the deal, Michael. He burned down his apartment cooking some drugs. Jesus. No, it was apparently some sort of marijuana-based purity thing. I don't know what he's doing with it, but
He says Michael Mueller says the Polar Express is desperate for drivers.
Clearly they are. I think that's the outfit too. Polar Express. I think he's right about that. But yeah, and like I said earlier, Michael, he's obviously a card. He's probably a funny guy to go have a couple of drinks with, but that's got nothing to do with his driving. You know, you can't do that. You just can't do that. You don't want him running anybody else off the ice road. I'm sure those guys don't want to be run off the ice road.
Vignesh says, how do you deal with road rage?
That's a good question, and the answer is you just back right off the throttle and get away from the guy. Just have nothing to do with him. If you've got to get off an exit or trick him so he keeps going and you jump off, just avoid him like the plague, because nothing good ever comes of road rage. And you know what? There are times when it's okay to use your cell phone when you're driving, and I'd be calling the cops too. I'd be letting them know that you've got some lunatic harassing you where you are and that you're going to need their help because this guy's going cuckoo, and just avoid him like the plague and call the cops. Those are my two rules. Nobody needs that kind of crap, but I have a low tolerance for crap. You may have noticed that, but don't have time for those fools. So that's my take on that deal. Nick?
Don't say that.
I always watched Ice Road Truckers until Daryl Ward died in a plane crash. Yeah, that was tragic. I think he was a decent guy, too. He seemed like a nice fella. That was just kind of a fluky thing. That was sad. That was a sad deal. Mixed Grill says ignore them. This is the crazy drivers. Yeah, Just ignore them. Good advice.
Chris said he had an experience where he had to terminate a friend and owner-operator following a positive urine test. He was his fleet manager. His friend was then employed 2 weeks later under a new company.
And that's exactly what this clearinghouse is supposed to prevent when they get all the information inputted into it. That all carriers are going to be on this system. They can look up this guy's name and find out his drug history. That's the whole point of it. But yeah, it's tough, I bet, to have to get rid of a friend. But it's not you that's made the rule in the first place. You're working for somebody else, and that's just your job. Yeah, I'm sure it is a tough situation, but should he have another job 2 weeks later? No, and that's what the clearinghouse, the purpose of this clearinghouse is.
Jimmy Savage wants to know, what is the Lettuce King's opinion on all this?
Oh no, he's the lettuce king is a card, but he's no abuser of drugs or alcohol at all. I don't even think he drinks.
No. Not at all.
No, I don't even think he drinks.
No, he's a lot of things, but
Yeah,
he's not that.
No, he's a walking handful, but he's not. That's not an issue with him.
So you jerks don't answer questions. Well, you can leave, bud.
Swift Knight are banned in Canada. Michael Mueller. Really? Well, I know they're not up here. That's true. Huh. Didn't know that. I might have to apply to Polar. Craig, huh. Take your warm socks. Those guys never run anywhere fun, I don't think. Just freezing. I hate being cold. Jimmy Savage says, sorry, I was just hoping for a Lettuce King story. There's no shortage of them. We got something coming down the pike for that'll satisfy your need for Lettuce King stories. Stick around and stay tuned. Fleet Nav is right. The Lettuce King did overdose on carrots one time. That's true. That's true. Oh man, you should have seen him. He was just orange when he got out of the truck.
Dylan says pay should go up for us clean guys. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and that's what we're saying. That's what we're saying. It makes our license more valuable because we can pass a drug test. And it's time the trucking industry recognize this, and now this clearinghouse, and I believe that's FMCSA sponsored, this clearinghouse, is going to see to that. And I'm all for that. I'm all for that. You've got to draw a hard line on some things. There's just and yeah, that's where one of my hard lines is. You just don't want to be out among the motoring public not being the best you can be. And you just can't be the best you can be if you've got some sort of a mind-altering substance in your system. It's simple. There's kids out there. There's little kids. You couldn't live with yourself if you hurt a family or something like that, you know? Be bloody awful. They're into the Lettuce King here. How about the time the broccoli flowered on him? Yes. Well, sometimes you get in too big a hurry, or sometimes you just don't care enough to check your unit. And he was just sick of having to fix the thing, and he said smoke it, and he put both sticks to the wall and headed for home as quick as he could. It caught up with him in the end, though, I think. Mixed Girl says it's irresponsible. It is irresponsible. It is. Think if that was your wife and kids out there in a car. Would you want some stoner cleaning them off the highway? Of course you wouldn't.
Linda from the FMCSA compliance specialist says drug-free experienced teams should be compensated much more than they are.
Drug-free experienced teams should be compensated much more than they are. I agree. We should all be compensated much more than we are because we're becoming a more and more valuable commodity. And yeah, teams, good drivers, there are all sorts of good drivers that just won't participate in this industry anymore because the money's not there anymore the way it used to be. And if the pay went up, they wouldn't have a driver shortage. There'd be no driver shortage. But they've got to increase the pay, and they'd get experienced, clean drivers. But that's not the way a lot of the industry thinks. So Hamish is back. Good to see you. Where did you go? Need to write a book about the Lettuce King story, says Bradley Weaver.
Good idea.
That's a good suggestion. That's a good suggestion. We were talking the other day, and I've lost track of how many years I drove now. It's like 44 or something like that, 45. I quit counting. But over that lifetime, you accumulate an awful lot of stories about an awful lot of funny things that you saw. So we're in the midst of putting something like that together. We'll work on it anyway. You should see FedEx on 95 in the Northeast. FedEx guys scare me no matter where they are. This time-sensitive delivery is another problem with the industry, and I don't agree with that either, because they all drive like raped apes because they're under a tight schedule, and it's always the FedEx guys you see in the bush when the weather turns bad. So I guess we should start to wrap it up for this evening. We're getting close to that time, but I just wanted to vent on this deal with Art Burke because it kind of set me off. But it's just one little story of a much bigger problem, and the industry would be far better off, in my opinion, if they could weed out the people with issues. So I'm all for that. I support this clearinghouse. The establishment of this clearinghouse, basically to help with that. I think it's a good thing, and it's a step forward. It may take a few years to sort out the good from the bad and the clean from the dirty, but let it take whatever it takes, and whatever progress they can make, more power to them. That's how I see it anyway.
Jonathan, once again, thank you for another $5 of generosity. I think the DOT should be a little stricter on drinking while on the road. It's a huge problem. Even driving with a hangover is dangerous.
It is. That's a good point, Jonathan. You're absolutely right. I also would like to say there that I think that should be equally enforced among truck drivers and four-wheelers, because I might be going out on a limb. I've got no statistics here, but I don't think drinking and driving with truck drivers is nearly as big a problem as it is with four-wheelers. So that's my take on that. I'd love to see that far more heavily enforced. And they do it every once in a while. They'll have a blitz around Christmas time, but that should be all the time, not just Christmas time. Anyway, thank you guys for letting me get this off my chest.
I want to give a special thank you to our donators for today: Adam, Hamish, Mark Vaz, Sam F., Akis, and Jonathan Mestrel, Dan Higgins. Thank you to everyone who donated today. Thank you to everyone in chat who showed up today, commented, and participated in today's discussion. Do we have a Friday video coming up for this week, and what's that on?
What you need to know about the Jake break.
We're going to talk about the Jake break in Friday's video. It's some interesting stuff. What you need to know about the Jake break. So tune in for that. Thank you guys for the donations. Thank you guys for just joining us. Love chatting with you. Kelly Patterson, I hope your mom liked it. We tried to behave ourselves. But thank you, everyone. And I want you guys all to take care. Be safe. We'll see you on the back hall. Take care. Good night, everybody.